Right, this is it. We're back. How to colour sand and buff a car properly, featuring Eleanor Mustang. 1, 2, 3 on the go. I've got here. Now this is the before car, so 5 coats of clear. You're going to do this properly. Now this is for a good job, right? So a driver quality car, you might just do 2 or 3 coats. This is 5 coats. Might want to do 6 coats. A little bit of orange peel because we had to back off. You can't just pile it on. I'll talk about that later. This is the after. So cut with 800, 1200, 1500, 2000, 2500, and you can see the result. It is as flat as glass. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's about 55 hours it took me for one car, and that's with stripes. Stripes take a bit longer as well, but you see there it's flat as glass, and it actually looks better in real life than in the camera because we've got a bit of bad reflection here from these LED lights. So let's get into it. We left the car for 6 weeks. This is on the left, 3 weeks, then 6 weeks. Right, you see the one at 6 weeks there, it's sunk back a bit more. The other one's cracked a bit more because it was thicker. But the 6 weeks, it's sunk back, and that's doing that over the whole car, right? So we'll let that do its thing. Sanding block, the hard block, no Velcro, right? It's got to be the hard block. Check to see if it's flat. Sand that on the 180 grit. And same as sanding primer. I'm not going long ways. We're going diagonal, so going to be parallel with the outside curve. And it's just like sanding primer. So you shouldn't be doing this unless you're already competent at that, by the way, I think. You don't want to cut through any edges. You don't want to do circles because you think you're doing a circle, but you might catch an edge without knowing and put a groove in where you can't really see it. So you just do diagonal. That's with the hard block. And then finish up with the soft block, same with the 800. Get in there and you just do your edges. This one here having the stripe, so I've just gone over that inside edge there with the stripe. And then you might finish with a long stroke or two, but you don't want to just sit there and go long ways because you're going to just put a groove in the clear. Like the 800 cuts that well. You don't want to just mess it up. And then you go over the rest of it, with the 800 soft block just to even it out, like just in case there was any imperfections there. And yeah, that's 800. Now, you don't want to do everything with 800. There's a few spots here, behind the back wheel. These 67 Mustangs have this profile up there. So I didn't do that with 800 just to risk, because there's a bit of a risk of cutting through the clear. So you can go for your life on the flats. This here, the waterborne cleaner, before we use a guide coat, you've got waterborne cleaner. It's Metho 50/50. Buy a bottle, tip half out, fill it with water, pull a hole in the lid, and that's your squeezy bottle. This here, now before we put the guide coat on, we're going to clean the panel because there's a slight film of sludge. And you can see it doesn't look like much, but that little bit of sludge there, in the gap, in the grooves, it'll prevent the guide coat from going in the sanding scratches, right? Now, before we guide coat, another trick, a wax and grease remover, checking the suspect areas, right? So say the Eleanor's here behind the flares on these front guards, it's a suspect area. There might be ripples there. So the wax and grease remover will allow you to see that. Don't use water because water doesn't sit as flat on the panel. Wax and grease remover, you can see here, sits really flat on the panel. Like it's very, will show up everything, right? So that's just another trick. That's a suspect area. You can do the whole car like that if you want. But I think it's pretty safe here. And yeah, the guide coat. So the dry guide coat, the graphite powder, you can cheat. You can actually tip it straight on the panel if you want to. Can't do that on the sides, of course, but on the flats here. See the black stripe? You can't see where we're going there with the guide coat, but you can just extrapolate how long it takes to sand the colour. Use the same time on the guide coat. Now the 1200 grit phase is exactly the same as the 800. Using the hard block, you do the flats first, go diagonal, and what we're going to do is to finish with the soft block, same as the 800, right? You're just going to smooth over the outside. And then, another demo here, then with the 1500, we can cheat. We don't need the hard block. The car is cut as flat as it's ever going to be with the 1200. So now, just the soft flexi block for the 2000 and 1500. You still got to do the other process of cleaning the panel, right? You still got to clean the panel, before you put the guide coat down, after the 1500 and after the 2000 grit. Now see here, 2000 grit, soft block. So we've done the same thing, metho the panel, put the guide coat down, and yeah, you're not going to miss any scratches this way, because if you miss a scratch, you know what happens, you don't see it until the end when you start buffing, then you got to go back the 2 or 3 or 4 steps with the sandpaper. It's just frustrating. With the 2500 grit here, what we've done, we still clean the panel, but I haven't guide coated it, right? 2500 so fine, you risk clogging it up easier, but you still got to clean the panel. I've done here 3 runs, look, about 2 square foot, and that's it. Now the sandpaper is now cooked. It's done, it's burnt out. You can be tempted to keep using it, but 2500 burns out quick, and also it can clog up, and when it clogs up, you get the little bits of build up in the paper that'll actually scratch the paint. This is where the phantom scratches come from. Like, you buff the car and you don't know where the scratches are coming from. You think you've done everything right. That's why. Part of the reason why is clogging up the sandpaper. So they said 2 square foot and that's it. This here with the wall pad, this is where the buffing begins. Now the juice cutting compound with the wall pad, I just cleaned it before. Slow. You do not want to get any heat into the panel. You get a bit of heat into the 2-pack finish, it'll actually cut quicker, but you don't want the heat into the panel, right? And I'm going to make a mistake here. I'm using the thing with one hand. I rode over that ridge there. Don't do that, right? So I'm going to do it again here by mistake. So I'm just using the phone with one hand, and there's a bit of torque in this machine with the big pad. It gets away on me a bit here, but you see what's going on. I'm going up to the edge now. The pad's spinning clockwise, so I'm rolling off the edge, right? So the pad's rolling off the edge. I'm not cutting onto the edge, if you know what I mean there. Because if you cut onto the edge, this pad, it's so coarse, you actually risk cutting through the clear, especially on the sharper edges. Like the edge of the bonnet there, not so much, but on any sharp edges, you can definitely risk cutting through it, right? And it was going slow. I'm going to each area probably 3 times. Here we have, test now, the swirl marks left look like scratches. They are scratches. But what we're looking for, the difference between the sandpaper scratch and the swirl marks, you see the buff, how it rotates. You can't see in the video here, in the black, but you see the patterns of these little semicircles. That's the pattern left by the machine. And that's what we're looking for here, right? If we see a pigtail or long scratches, that's from the sandpaper. So that means we've got to buff it again. You've got to go over it again. If you're just seeing the semicircles, you're fine to move to the next phase. Now the next phase is the orange foam pad. It's a bit finer, and it's cutting. It's the intermediate between the coarse one and the meat in the swirl remover. You can just hit it straight with swirl remover, but it's so fine you're going to spend a whole day going over it to get rid of the scratches. This here, it's the same compound. It's the juice cutting, but it's the orange foam buff pad. It's a bit finer, and it will cut out the scratches we're talking about before, little semicircles. The third lot of buffing, more buffing, is the the swirl remover with the finer pad. This is the grey pad. It's the grey foam pad, and same thing, we're just going over it slow, not doing anything stupid, just go slow, take your time, and keep your mind on what you're doing. Like, it's easy to let your mind wander, 50-something hours of sanding and buffing, but you really got to be careful here, because you don't want to do anything wrong. Now, that there, you're just going to see that there. I'm going to wipe this with a rag. Now, this is the microfiber cloth. So the rest of the job I've just been using standard rags, just a big pack of rags for $60. These things, when it comes to the final finish, so the final swirl remover and the final polish, you're going to want to use the microfiber cloths, and super careful, make sure they're not contaminated. with any dirt or anything, get them straight out of the packet. And you can see here, shine, that's no polish or anything, that's just me with the swirl remover. And the left and right down, that black stripe's like night and day. And that's it. I mean, I've glossed over a bit here because I'm going to assume you've already buffed a car. I'm going to assume you already know what you're doing and you just want to level up a little bit more. I said you shouldn't be doing this if you're just learning. Like, it's just all the risk of cutting through the clear. But if you've colour sanded cars before, you've been around, you've painted cars, you just know to sand primer, it's certainly doable. You just got to be careful with the edges. So with the 800, 1200 and 1500, don't hit your edges. You can hit the edges with the 2000 grit sandpaper, but not the coarser stuff. And yeah, you definitely see the results. There's a big difference between a car that's cut with 1200 and 800. Like, it's side by side, it's very noticeable. So the cutting it with 800 definitely does the job. And yeah, get to it.